Hello, welcome to our second podcast for Practical Research 1. This is your teacher again, Dr. Jerome Cleofas. The last podcast, we discussed about the nature of inquiry. This time, we're going to be discussing about the nature of research. So research is a systematic inquiry using disciplined methods to generate knowledge and solve problems. For us to be able to understand that definition more deeply, let us break down the statement into segments. So first, research is systematic, meaning it follows a step-by-step procedure. You begin with asking a question and then trying to set up a framework to address that question, trying to look for a design or a methodology to be able to address that question, to collect the data, analyze the data, and then do the report. Okay, next, research involves inquiry. Research begins with a problem. Research begins with a question in mind. Next, research involves disciplined methods. So in order for us to be able to address our question or solve our problems, we need to make use of scientifically tested methods in terms of collecting data. We just don't interview. There is a systematic way of doing interviews. We just don't do surveys. There's a systematic way of doing surveys. So it's not just hearsay. It's not just, doing things out of whim, but there is a science and a philosophy behind the ways we collect our data in research. Next, research at the end is able to fulfill at least one of two things. The first one is to generate knowledge. So the goal of research is to be able to add to the body of knowledge that is already there in a given discipline. So if you're a nurse, then you will most likely be contributing to new knowledge in terms of nursing, in terms of health, in terms of engineering, in terms of culinary arts, or whatever profession you choose to be in. Next, research intends to solve problems through development of interventions, through development of different solutions, through the formulation of policies as inspired by the research. If you can see, there are many programs in St. Paul that are actually supported by research. Like, for example, the health services are inspired by research. The guidance counseling services are inspired by research. The reason why we have a satellite canteen is because there was research done in order for us to see the feasibility of offering a satellite canteen. And even the offering of SHS in St. Paul University, Manila, there was a feasibility study done in order for us to be able to offer SHS in St. Paul. So most of the programs that you see and the laws that we have, they're not just created out of whim. They're actually products and inspired by research studies that have been done by people who are interested in certain topics and are really keen to improving the quality of life of the population. So why is it important for us to know about research skills at an early age? And what is its application to daily life? One, research basically is focused on problem solving, and in our lives, we'll be solving a lot of problems. That's very obvious. And of course, if we want to create certain products, like for example, technological gadgets like phones or new appliances or new furnitures, it's important for us to know how to do research. When we want to create programs, like for the community or entertainment programs, this is also based on research. And if you want to be able to influence laws and policies, it's important for us to be able to know how to do and conduct research. So, what are the characteristics of a good research? The first one is that research involves accuracy. Especially when you're talking about quantitative research, it's important for us to be able to collect precise data, to be able for us to collect the correct data, and to be able to see that our data is truthful. Next, research involves some element of objectiveness, meaning the researcher should not be having any bias in terms of the data that he is collecting, or that the methods that you make use must also be towards getting the truth. Next, good research is both timely and relevant, meaning the topics that we should be tackling about are topics that are concerns of the now and that are relevant to a larger segment of the population. Next, research should be clear, meaning when we report research, we should be able to use straightforward, formal, or technical language in order for us to convey our message to our reader, especially if the reader is not technical or not from the discipline that you're reporting from. And finally, let me reiterate that research is systematic. It follows a step-by-step procedure that is based from disciplined methods, that is based from scientific methods, based from philosophically sound methods. So, why do you need to learn research? What are the indirect benefits of doing research? One, it helps you to work independently. I know that I ask you to work in groups, but later on, when you contribute to your research project, there will be times where you have to work and read independently, think independently, and analyze the data independently. Next, research helps you work scientifically and systematically, meaning in your future professions, you might need to, do some procedural tasks to make use of science, and having research skills would help you get those skills easily. Next, research helps you to gain in-depth knowledge of the topics that you're interested in and probably the topics that you may need to explore when you're already working in the industry. Next, research also helps you develop your higher order thinking skills, like your abstract thinking, because in research, especially in qualitative research that you will be doing in this class, you will be using your mind in order to analyze data, gather, and infer patterns from the data. You will be making concept maps, you will be doing some sort of modeling, you will be analyzing the data, finding out why they say these things, what are the context of the data and the findings that you're getting. Next, your research helps you to improve your reading and your writing skills. That's very important. In this class, you'll be reading a lot, so I tell you that. You'll be reading a lot, consuming a lot of words, consuming a lot of articles. You'll be spending a lot of time reading things that they may be jargon to you, may be alien to you. So you need to have your dictionary with you in order for you to understand the different articles that you will need to read for your literature review, for your analysis, for your methodology. So you will really read in this class. And more importantly, you will also write a lot in this class. Most of our requirements will require you to write paragraphs, write whole pages, write whole sections of paper. And you will be able to practice your argumentation skills, your persuasive skills. You will also be able to practice your explicitation skills in this class when you write. And you will learn a lot of that when you do your consultations with me. And it also helps you in gathering different types of data, like how do you gather interview data? How do you do focus group discussions? How do you get observational data, survey data? How do you get data from the social media? What are the different scientific methods of doing those things? You will learn that in this class. And also, how do you present the findings? How do you garner themes and patterns from the findings? What is the best way to visualize these findings into your document? You'll be able to learn that in this class. Next, we have the different typologies of research. The first typology is the basic or pure research and the applied research. Now, if you remember from our definition earlier, research aims to generate knowledge and to solve problems. Now, if your research aims to purely just, generate new knowledge, to be able to explore uncharted phenomenon, to be able to uncover descriptively certain things about a situation or a topic, then your research is a basic or pure research. Remember that most of our qualitative research will be under the basic and pure research category. Now, if your research involves you to create programs or create products to test certain interventions, to be able to do laboratory work, or to be able to test your policies and see if they have an effect on certain variables, then those types of research that aims to solve problems, to make practical solutions out of our problems, is called applied research. In this class, we may not be doing a lot of applied research because we will do qualitative research. But in your practical research too, we are expecting you to do a lot of applied research. Next typology is whether your research is descriptive, correlational, explanatory, exploratory, action research. Now, descriptive research basically just aims to describe a certain phenomenon. This can be described through magnitude quantitatively or described through narratives in a qualitative research. Your research can also be correlational. Correlational studies are mostly quantitative research to see the relationship between one variable and another variable. Next is you have your explanatory research. So it aims to basically explain why certain phenomena happen. And exploratory research, it basically aims to find factors why a certain phenomena happens. Next, we have action research, which goal is to be able to collect data, make an action, intervention, or a policy or a program out of that data, test that data, and then try to see how to evaluate that data and improve the interventions that you've made. We have the qualitative and quantitative research. So basically, qualitative research involves a lot of unstructured data, involves narratives, involves texts, or even involves visual data. Now, the goal of qualitative research is to be able to describe phenomenon using narratives. Next, we have quantitative research. Quantitative research involves, large sample sizes. It involves numbers, involves measurements. It involves statistics, computations. It involves hypothesis, testing whether variable A has a relationship with variable B. So that's the difference between qualitative and quantitative research. In this class, in Practical Research 1, you'll be doing a lot of qualitative research. What is qualitative research in terms of methodology? You'll be doing interviews, you'll be doing text analysis, you might be doing some sort of group discussions, or you might want to get social media narrative data based on the type of topic that was assigned to you for this class. Next, there are also types of research in terms of the type of data that you're getting. Now, if you're getting the data yourself, like you are the one who's going to do the interview or you're the one collecting the survey, you collect the data firsthand. As a researcher, you use primary data. But, for example, you're doing a research that tries to correlate the previous grades of the previous SHS students with their college grades. And then you are not going to collect the data because the data has been collected by the registrar before, and you're just going to get it from the registrar. Now, this pre-collected data before the conception of the research, these are called your secondary data. Next, let's look at the approaches or the paradigms to approaching research. Now, the first is the scientific or the positivist paradigm. So the scientific and the positivist paradigm, usually these are the research that believes that laboratory research is best, that research in controlled environments are the best research. The truth is objective, the truth is singular, that everything can be measured, and we should be able to bring out measuring tools in order for us to get the accuracy of the data that we're getting. Usually, for scientific and positivist paradigm, we make use of the quantitative research. Next, we have the naturalist or constructivist paradigm. This believes that reality is something that's subjective. Reality is something that's shared, that we have different definitions of reality, that the phenomenon can be defined based on culture, history, and context. And therefore, in order for us to know the truth, we need to ask people about it and not really measure it in a controlled environment such as in a laboratory. The best way to be able to get is to the stories and experiences of people rather than measuring them as subjects. Usually, qualitative research make use of the naturalist or constructivist paradigm. And finally, you have the pragmatic and the triangulation paradigm. So the triangulation paradigm, it means that you're not just getting quantitative data, you're also getting qualitative data. You get best of both worlds. Now, pragmatic means because it's practical for you to know the phenomenon using both approaches. Now you get quantitative data and qualitative data. You don't just survey, you also interview. You don't just interview, you also observe. You also do discussion. You also get data from social media. So that's pragmatic or triangulation paradigm. We get more than one source of data in order for us to get multiple perspectives about the phenomenon. In this class, we might usually venture in the naturalist or constructivist paradigm. How do people construct through their experiences and their stories and their narratives, reality? That is basically the thrust of qualitative research. Next, we have the different phases of research. Now, research has generally 5 phases. The first phase is the conceptualization phase, wherein we try to identify the problem, collect literature in order for us to narrow down our problem, set up the framework to answer our problem. Next, we have the design and planning phase. This is where we try to plan what is our research design, who are going to be our population to be interviewed in the study, how will we do our interview, what will be the questions we will ask, how do we collect our data, how do we recruit our participants, how do we analyze our data, and how do we make the methodology of our research ethical. In short, no, in the design and planning phase, we are discussing about the methodology section. Next, we have the empirical phase. The empirical phase is where you collect the data. You go out, so you've set up your plan, you have your pilot test already, you have your questionnaires ready, you have your audio recorder ready, and now you're going to meet with the participants and collect their data. So actual data collection is the empirical phase. The next one is the analytic phase. So once you've collected all the data, you're now going to make sense of the data, analyze the data, gather themes. If it's quantitative, then you're going to compute. But this is qualitative, so you're just going to look at themes, patterns from the thick narrative data, and make sense about it. Make conclusions and inferences about the data that you've collected. Because you just don't show, this is the interview. No. What are the learnings that you got from the interviews? What are the patterns and the themes and the common knowledge that has been shared by the different participants in the interview? So that's your analytic phase. And finally, we have the dissemination phase. It has 2 parts. The first one is reporting of the results of the findings. Because remember, research is not done unless you report the results, so that people will be able to know about your findings about the study. And number 2 is the utilization of the results. So now you know that OFWs have a hardship in terms of doing parenting. So what policies can we do? What programs can we give parents or who are overseas Filipino workers in order to become better parents? We've learned that people with mental health illnesses are experiencing discrimination. So what now? What programs can we do in order to be able to decrease the stigma and discrimination that people with mental health challenges are experiencing? Or, for example, you've learned that rescuers feel that there is a problem in terms of the way the different cultures, that they have to deal with when they're doing their rescue mission. So what programs, policies, what teachings can be done in order for us to make use of this data in order to improve the practice that we are trying to address? So that's the end of our podcast for today. I hope you learned a little bit about research. I know that a lot of the terms that I've been saying might be too, over your heads yet. No, I promise when we do our actual research, you'll be able to understand all some of the terms that I've been talking about. So I'll see you in class later, and there will be a quiz about this and podcast number 1. So prepare next week.